of all, thank you so much. I think I can speak for the entire group here from Washington when I say that we sense a really great energy in the room, and we feel like there's really very high potential for some great work coming out of all of you here, and when you go back to your respective countries building the network there. And I also wanted to thank our colleagues at CARE Egypt. Again, I think I can speak collectively when I say you guys have done an incredible job in pulling together a very well done event in a relatively short amount of time. So thank you very much. And I also wanted to thank Dr. Abdel Hassan for the wonderful introduction. I don't know if you saw me nodding vigorously as you were presenting some of the common challenges. But I really feel like so many of the provocative questions you raised and so many of the common challenges that you identified have really manifested themselves in the three ANSA. I want to hit on kind of a very broad overview of what the ANSA networks are. And the hopes is that by my presenting the experience we've had with the three existing regional networks, we can think about, first of all, if this model might apply to the MENA region, and if so, how we can really tailor it and customize it to make it most effective here. So what are the ANSAs, first and foremost? The ANSAs are regional networks of social accountability practitioners. And I think it's very important to begin first and foremost with what do we mean when I say practitioner? I think very much like the audience here today, practitioners we like to define as government, as civil society, as business coalitions. We really take a very inclusive understanding of practitioner, and that is because in our experience, when you're working in social accountability and governance issues like this, you really need to involve all stakeholders to make programs effective and to make initiatives sustainable. Why social accountability? I know Gabriel is going to cover that later in the afternoon. So I thought I would talk very briefly a little bit about why a network for social accountability. And the ANSA networks were created kind of operating on the assumption that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This means that social accountability, it varies by region, but it's really a new and emerging practice. It's relatively an emerging concept for many of us. So the thinking behind creating these regional networks was that we'd be able to pool resources and to pool knowledge so that you could learn from colleagues who are experimenting in similar ways, who are learning on the ground, and that we'd be able to learn quickly by combining our relative experience of a visual representation of where the ANSA networks were. The first one was in South Africa. It's housed at an NGO, and they have two kind of sub-regional hubs, which are in Senegal and Ethiopia. The second ANSA network is East Asia Pacific. It's housed in the Philippines at a university, and it has 4 focus countries, which are Cambodia, Mongolia, the Philippines, and Indonesia. The third is ANSA South Asia, which is housed at Brak University in Bangladesh, and they work in Bangladesh, Nepal, India, and Sri Lanka. And ANSA Global is not in Australia, as it may seem here, but it's really there to link all three. And they have 3 grants this year. One is going to CARE Egypt, one is going to an organization in the Kyrgyz Republic, and a third to an alliance for budget transparency in Latin America. It's always been a smooth road, but a lot of things have worked well in the ANSAs. We find that in the 3 regions, there really has been a very strong regional demand for them. Network growth usually starts a little slow and then goes very quickly. So that's really been an affirmation of the fact that people are interested in this topic, and a network for this topic could be very useful. I think it's been very helpful and productive for our networks to exchange among each other. Instead of just having contact with the World Bank, they're now part of this, they like to call it the ANSA family, and they work very closely together. And I think another thing that has worked very well is expanding the social accountability universe, moving from just working with CSOs to really constructively engage in government, the private sector, universities, academia, research organizations, etc. A lot of these challenges I think we've talked about already, but quite easily sustainability is our #1 challenge that refers to mainstreaming it in the institution, in the host institution, as well as to providing funders who can complement and take on the funding once the 3-year seed funding from the World Bank has expired. I think in governance more broadly, but especially in the social accountability field, because it's new, there aren't metrics and evaluation frameworks that have been developed that can allow us to effectively and clearly show impact. So that's been something that the networks all respectively are struggling with, but working to come up with some good ways to show their results. With respect to capacity building, what they have found is that beyond coming to trainings with people and beyond doing these workshops, they really need to link the capacity building with opportunities to do learning in action, to apply the skills that they've learned in projects in their organizations. And the last question that I think we all need to think about over the course of the next 4 days is, how do you define a network member? Is it an individual who comes to the website? Is it someone who actively contributes documents? Or is it someone who really becomes a champion in his or her own country and builds coalitions? And you know, it's different networks. On the East Asia Pacific, for example, they have an individual network member, an institutional member, and a champion. So it's kind of how you want to divide up your members so that they can work most effectively together.